Karate Champ. One of the founding fathers of fighting games. The game was very basic for its time in the arcade. White guy versus red guy, you hit your opponent or your opponent hits you. You gain half a point or a full point depending on how you attack your opponent or how your opponent attacks you. Win 2 points in both rounds and you win. There are two versions of the game. Championship and player versus player, which is the only version to have 2-player feature. Both versions have 11 levels, which are 1st through 9th, 10G, and CMP, which stands for Championship. And like most early traditional arcade games, this game doesn't have an ending. You'll keep playing until you reach the high score, even if you won at CMP rank so many times. In Championship, you fight the red guy in the dojo at beginner. Then you fight another red guy for the national championship, starting at intermediate. Then you defend your title against the red guy numerous times in Advanced, Master, and Grandmaster, but you stay at Grandmaster once you beat it over and over again, even at CMP rank. In player versus player, you're fighting the red guy to win a girl in each area. And although there are 11 levels including CMP, there are 12 areas to fight in, each with a different girl. After the 12th area, you go back to the first one, and it keeps going like an endless cycle until you lose and have the highest score possible. And in both versions, in between each round there are different bonus mini stages, such as evading plants, chopping water stones, and slowing down the cow. But I'm not here to talk about the arcade version of Karate Champ. I'm here to talk about the Karate Champ we all know that got ported into the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now before I bash this game, let me just say that this game is an adaptation of player versus player, not a port because it's different for the most part. And might I add, they did a horrible job at making this game. Let's take a look. Here's your basic title screen with the option to select 1 player or 2 player. Nothing special. First, let's talk about the major flaws of the game. In the arcade version, the way you would control your characters with 2 arcade sticks per player. One for moving, the other for punching and kicking. Now you might think that translating those controls to NES controls would work in this game, right? It would have, but apparently Data East was too lazy to do so. The controls are so fucked up. For example, when I press a button or a combo of 2 buttons, I do one move. When I press the same buttons again, it does a different move. This happens a lot, and sometimes the controls can be unresponsive when you desperately need to hit your opponents. Also, this game is probably the worst hit detection in an 8-bit fighting game. Look, I'm right close to the guy, but he's not going down. He takes forever to get hit. And another huge problem is the fact that the difficulty doesn't change at all in each level. It doesn't get any harder, nor it doesn't get any easier. It stays the same. And that's the biggest reason why this game bored me to death. Now, let's talk about the minor flaws. If this is based on the player versus player version, shouldn't the 2 guys be fighting for something like the girl in the arcade version? If you play the entire game and all the levels from 1st to CMP, you'll notice that they're fighting for absolutely nothing! What are they fighting for? I seriously would like to know. Plus, none of the areas are taken from the arcade version except maybe the second area, which is the 3rd area in the arcade version as well as the practice area. And you know what's the most annoying part about this game? The motherfucking victory dance! I don't know what to say about this. Give me the Nintendo Zapper so I can shoot the motherfucker. No, fuck that. Give me a real gun like an AK-47 or something. This is so fucking annoying! I'm sorry, but the only thing the NES version has that's better than the arcade version is the music. I honestly think that the music in this one is better than the one in the arcade version. I also give props to Data East for including the voice of the judge in the NES version. The Famicom Disk System version is pretty much the same exact thing except for the slightly different version of the music in the NES version. And the pause sound from Robocop, which by the way, is another crappy arcade port by Data East. I remember playing this game when I was a kid, and even though I liked it at that time, I was so pissed off that there was no ending to the game when I went all the way back to the very beginning in the CMP rank. But a few years later, I finally realized how bad it was. Then I looked up the original arcade version, and it was so much better. And yeah, I still stand by what I said. And why couldn't they just make a direct port of these arcade games? Other than the characters in the game in the second area, nothing else is taken from the arcade version. Didn't they learn from NES ports of Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Mario Bros. And stuff like that? And since the characters are fighting for absolutely nothing in this version, this game should just be called Karate, because there's no champ in this game. Anyway, if you like to collect NES games, then do yourself a favor and don't play this game. It's terrible and it's an awful game. I give it a 1 out of 5. 1 middle finger out of 5. Enough said.